All right, so brackets just got revealed last night, and but we got Jonas Thatcher with us. Jonas from Barbers United Barbershop. How
Yes,
are you
sir.
doing, Jonas?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Is are you looking forward to a lot of madness coming up in the next couple weeks?
I'm a little worried, dude. I heard somebody say this, and they said that every year, whenever you expect a lot of madness, it turns out to be chalk. And when everybody is saying it's going to be chalk, is when it turns into madness. And I'm worried that a lot of people are expecting madness because we just got through conference tournament week, which is, I mean, it rivals the first weekend of March Madness as being one of the greatest weekends in sports. And there was a lot of madness. So I'm a little worried that we may not get as much as we're expecting, but I always root for madness. I love chaos.
And one of the weird things too is a lot of the conference champions, people expect them to like ride that wave, and then we see these weird trends where like teams that just beat a bunch of good teams, all of a sudden then they have a letdown game.
Yeah. I have a future on Tennessee Vols to win the national championship. And I've been telling a lot of my clients, and a lot of Vols fans don't want to hear this, but I told them I actually was kind of rooting for Tennessee to maybe not lose in the first round, but like the second or third round. That way, A, you don't risk injury, you don't exhaust yourselves. And like you said, I mean, now, granted, if you have a double bye like some of these tournament teams do, but if you have to win 4 or 5 games in a row just to win your conference championship, and then the next weekend you start over the next 4 weeks winning another 5 or 6 games, it's hard to do, no
Yeah.
matter how good you are.
And UConn, like what UConn did with like Kemba Walker, that stuff doesn't just usually happen. Like you don't run the table usually in your conference tournament, then run the table in March Madness. Like you have to have a combination of just a little bit of luck. You have to get hot at the right time. Sometimes it also has to do with like the teams that you play in your bracket. So like having a good matchup against a lower seeded team that's making a little bit of a Cinderella run, sometimes those fumes run out. So it's really strange, just kind of like maybe it's not always the best team advances, but a lot of teams at times it's like the matchups on top of it too. So before we get into the matchups, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about like where your fandom lies within college sports? Because I'm a little bit obvious. I
Yeah.
kind of like I'm kind of a little too obvious about it.
So mine's a little confusing because I grew up in northern Indiana, where Indiana is a basketball state, 100%. And it would normally be big time Hoosiers. But while I was growing up, the Hoosiers were not very good. Like there was a couple years they made the tournament, but they were not consistently good, and they were never national championship contenders. So I really never caught on to that bandwagon growing
Yeah.
up. And so Purdue, I loved growing up. Purdue had like a three-headed monster. Robbie Hummel was my favorite player, but that was early days. And then once again, by the time I hit middle school, high school, Purdue wasn't as relevant. So those are kind of the two schools where I don't have a super strong tie to either one of them, even though I probably should. But grew up, neither of my parents went to either of the schools. Neither of them were from Indiana, and we were, over 2.5, 3 hours from either one of the schools. So I didn't have super strong ties to either one. But I always grew up Indiana, Purdue, like those schools. And then my my college football interest is the Miami Hurricanes, right?
Gotcha.
My stepdad is from Miami, Florida. He was Miami everything, but they don't have a big basketball program. Like, they
Yeah.
went on a run last year, which was a lot of fun, but they're not a typical basketball school. So I didn't grow up rooting for them college basketball either. So I always have those kind of three schools that, they kind of have my ties. But like I said, growing up or in the peak of like middle school, high school, they weren't that good. So I would always find a team to kind of latch on to every year based on their players and kind of who I like. So it kind of just depends. I love it. I watch every weekend. I keep up with it. So I'll always have a team or two going into the bracket, but it kind of varies. You know what I mean? Like I loved when Zion and R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish were at Duke. I was a big Duke fan. Now I can't stand Duke. I don't want to root for Duke anymore. You know what I mean? And growing up all those years, Kentucky was dominant. I hated Kentucky, but the past couple of years, I've kind of liked some of their teams. I love their
Yep.
team this year. They're a ton of fun to watch. And I always have Tennessee, who now that I've been here for long enough, I like rooting for Tennessee. I go to Tennessee games. So it kind of just depends. Kansas, I can't stand Kansas this year, but I loved them when they had Grady Dick and Jalen
Yeah.
Wilson and all them. They didn't win that year, but they were a ton of fun to watch, And so it kind of just depends. I love Dante DiVincenzo when he was at Villanova. He was one of my favorite players. So I kind of just try to find a team or two every year to root for because most of the time Indiana, Purdue, Miami were never in it. So I had to find somebody to root for. So every year I kind of find another team that I like. I like the way they play. I like a couple players, and I latch onto them.
I think there's also more so than in years past. I think there's a little bit more of like a cool factor with some of these teams and players, like Dalton Connect. Like white kid comes to Tennessee, he tears it up. Has like multiple games where he's either hit like 40 points or close to 40 points. Like, and then you've got also like some strange players like Jared McCain over at Duke that like likes to paint his fingernails, but he can like shoot the ball like crazy. Like you've got like this big mix of personalities now in college basketball, and then you add on this extra layer of all these super seniors. Like Cormac Ryan at UNC, he's 25 years old. He's older than like a lot of the youngest stars in the NBA by a couple years.
Yeah.
So you have this weird dynamic too, and it makes it these games a little bit harder to pick because you're trying to figure out like some teams are younger and have the talent, but then they go up against a team that's like got a ridiculous amount of experience, and that experience makes a huge difference in March Madness when the stakes are higher. The fans are getting more into it. You don't have that experience from all those other games. Yeah, you might be talented, but like you're also like in your youth. You don't have those extra years of experience to sort of get past like a team that gets on a roll. Which takes us to these picks. So we've got the bracket here. I would say out of all of these that UConn probably has one of the hardest quads out of the tournament to play in. I mean, they've got a couple of conference champions in here. Iowa State, a little bit overrated in my opinion.
You're wrong. But I think you're wrong on that one.
A little bit overrated in my opinion, but
shut down Houston, dude. Who's people are picking to win the national championship? They were the number. They were going to be the number one overall seed if they won their tournament.
I know it, but
and they
like
shut them. They held them to 30 points.
So like that was an awesome game, but it's also like you don't want to take a team that just had like their best game of the season.
They're great, dude. They could have been a number one seed.
They could have been, but
they maybe should have been. North Carolina lost. They probably should have been.
But they didn't beat like a bunch of the other good teams that they had played throughout the entire year. So it's like North Carolina just lost to NC State, one of the worst games of like the entire year. So like, do they go into March Madness like fixing those problems and then go on a run? Or like, does a team like Iowa State kind of hit their peak and then come crashing back down in the next two games?
I think so, dude. I think they've been good all year, and people are just sleeping on them.
All right, so I would say that out of all these teams, that UConn is definitely I think that they've been given the hardest path. Some people may disagree with that, but FAU, they just made a run to the Final Four last year. San Diego State, same deal. They made it to the Final Four last year. Auburn won the SEC. Illinois, they won the Big Ten. Iowa State, they won the Big 12. So, did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have Iowa State's schedule if you're ready to go over it.
Okay.
So on this tournament championship run, they beat Houston, they beat Baylor, they beat Kansas State. 3 good teams. 2 of them are in the tournament. Kansas State missed out. In the regular season, they beat BYU, who finished the season top 25 and is in the tournament as well. They beat UCF, who was a good team all year. Did they make the tournament?
No.
No. I don't think they did. They beat Oklahoma, who was one of the first 4 out. They beat Houston at home. They beat Houston. They beat Texas Tech. They beat Cincinnati, who's a good team. So they beat some teams. They've had a good year. I don't think it's just been. They beat Kansas, which Kansas was a little bit injured, but they beat them back in January. So I think they've got some good wins. Yeah, they beat Houston twice this year, dude. Once at a neutral site and once at home.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a hater about
it. I think you're being a hater to the Cyclones, dude. Give them a little bit more love.
Well, I don't think that there's going to be really much of an argument between this matchup between Iowa State and South Dakota State. So, yeah, Iowa State and South Dakota State, this will be the first game that we pick. I would lean towards Iowa State on this one. It sounds like you're probably agreeing with me on that.
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Then we're going to move up. Washington State against Drake. Now, one interesting thing that I saw earlier today was that the betting favors were actually going towards Drake in this one. So is this just Vegas trying to throw people off, or do they really think that we've got something cooking here between this 7 and 10 matchup?
I think we got something cooking. I think Drake's going to win.
I would agree on that too. That's actually, I don't know, as much of an upset as a 10 is over a 7, I guess, but upset nonetheless. And yeah, I would say Drake moves on here. Illinois and Morehead State. I'm going to go with Illinois.
100%.
All right. I will say, though, eventually, I'm going to lean into an upset with a 3 seed losing to a 14 seed because I don't think that we get out of this year without either a 2 or a 3 seed losing. I don't know if I'd be bold enough to go the 15 seed, but yeah, the last 3 years, either a 16 seed or a 15 seed is advanced. So, all right, BYU and Duquesne. What are you thinking on this one?
I like Duquesne, man. They just won the A10. I think they're a good team. I haven't watched much BYU, I'll be honest. But obviously I watched a little bit of Duquesne this past weekend. I like Duquesne. I'm taking Duquesne in this one for my personal bracket.
So we got BYU with 10 losses, Duquesne with 11. Looks like BYU's best player is Jackson Robinson, just under 14 points a game. And this can't be real. Is this guy's name really Day?
That's what it looks like.
Okay, well, so I guess we gotta go with Duquesne. And this is the funny thing about it because I'm not gonna pretend like I know every single thing about all these teams. And I think if everybody watching this is honest too, like they're not gonna know everything about the teams. Like sometimes you just have to take a matchup that is like just doesn't make sense.
I think this will make sense. Duquesne played good. Now the A10 was, it's the A10. So A10 basketball, yeah. Not my first choice, but noon on a Thursday, nothing else is going on. You got to tune in.
Unfortunately,
actually, I think the first one was on Tuesday. Yeah, their tournament started like on Tuesday.
Unfortunately, Jimmer Fredette doesn't play for BYU anymore, so yeah, so we'll go Duquesne.
Duquesne, we got to pick one up.
Auburn and Yale. I like Auburn in this one. Yeah, I think Auburn is coming into this with a lot of momentum. Of course, we talked about how sometimes you can burn out after having a heavy run, but yeah, I think Auburn's got this.
This is what Bruce Pearl does. They did this a couple years ago. They won the SEC and they went to the Final Four. Yeah. He builds teams he's unfortunately the opposite of Tennessee, and I think that makes Tennessee fans a little bit sad because they miss Bruce Pearl in some ways because as much as we love our current head coach, he's more of a regular season coach and fall apart in the playoffs or in the bracket. Yeah. And Bruce Pearl is quite the opposite, where he might have a rough regular season, but he gets his boys humming for the tournament and they make runs. So
yeah, Auburn advances. San Diego State and UAB. I'm going to lean a little bit towards San Diego State. This would be a game that I would lean in towards a little bit more of an upset, but I also think to be realistic too, you're really going to have about maybe 6 on average, like really good upsets during the tournament. So I would kind of lean a little bit into San Diego State. And also, too, they were just able to make it to the Final Four. So they've got some experience over UAB on this.
Works for me.
All right, FAU and Northwestern. You ever see the meme of the kid that's like in tears when Northwestern lost? Like he's a big Northwestern fan. Looks like he's about 10 years old and like he's just bawling his eyes out. Yeah, so I feel like that's going to happen again.
All right, you like good names?
All right, let's hear it.
Boo Buoy.
Boo Buoy.
Click on that preview.
All right.
There it is. Boo Buoy.
Boo Buoy. 19 points a game. He's a baller.
Stud. Listen, FAU, they made their run last year. Everyone's gonna love them. I do think they get a little bit too much criticism because their record wasn't very good. They weren't what people expected them to be because they brought back everybody from last year's run. Everybody on that team came back. They were supposed to be really, really good. However, they weren't that good. Now, I say they get too much criticism because they moved conferences. They went up a step, and they took a little bit of a beating because of that. But if we're being honest, they're only the 8 seed because of their name and because of the run that they went on. Now, they are 100% skilled. They could go on that same run. They have so much talent. But they've not been as good as they were last year. And I love Boo Buoy for Northwestern. He could go off in this tournament. He could make a run by himself, drop 25 points, and win this game.
Well, in their schedule, they beat Purdue by 4 points.
Yep.
They also beat Illinois by 5 points.
They've got some good wins.
Yeah, they put up 96 points against Purdue again. A bad loss, though. They did lose to Michigan State by 4, which was actually somewhat recent. So, like, they've got some good wins, though. Like, that, I actually, like, looking into it a little bit more of a formidable matchup than I thought.
I'm good either way. If we want to go FAU, that works for me. But I will say, if you're looking for a spot to kind of fade the rest of the crowd, I think a lot of people are going to pick FAU just because of the name and what they did last year. And maybe you can get a little bit of an edge on everyone else by taking Northwestern, riding with Boo Booey.
Yeah, it looks like FAU's got one good win against Arizona by a
Mm-hmm.
single point. Common matchup. They lost to Illinois by 9 points. Northwestern did beat Illinois. They do have one loss. But yeah, so all right. I'll cave. I'll go
You go
Northwestern on this
Northwestern?
one.
All
Yeah.
right.
And then
So,
I don't think we're gonna fight each other
and then
either
we'll be
on
the
this
10
one.
we'll be the
Like,
10-year-old kid crying when Northwestern loses in the first round.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay.
he'll get his comeuppance here against UConn in the next round, but I'm jumping forward a little bit here. So UConn over Stetson.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's skip down here to the bottom side. Go to the
Small
west.
fact: Stetson has a guard. Click on their preview.
Okay.
Let me make sure I have this right. I could have this wrong, but I'm pretty sure I have this right. Stetson's number one player, their guard that's been carrying them, is Jalen Blackman. And Jalen Blackman is from Fort Wayne, Indiana, my hometown.
21.5 points a game.
Yep. His brother James Blackman, VJ Blackman, they all played growing up in the same area, and then they all moved down to Marion where their dad became the head coach, and that's where he's from. He went to IU. James went to IU. He graduated a couple years before me. But yeah, anyway, from Fort Wayne, Indiana, so a little bit of ties there. I like Stetson, but yeah, they're not beating.
Yeah, this is going to be just
a fun fact.
This is going to be a destruction. They're going to just I think they're going to beat them by like 40.
They probably will.
Yeah.
But shout out Jalen Blackman.
And as much as a hater of UConn as I am, even I could admit that they've got a great team this year and are probably the odds-on favorites. I feel like I'm going to get my feelings hurt a little bit on this one. Let's go to the West with North Carolina. So they're gonna get the opportunity to smash whoever wins the play-in game on Tuesday.
Yep.
And I would say, if we're going realistic here, I would say North Carolina is going to win this one.
Next matchup.
All right, Mississippi State and Michigan State. Did Michigan State deserve to make it?
Yes.
They did. Over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Indiana State.
Okay, you can't do that. I mean, they could have got it for someone else. I mean, but this is what Michigan State does, man. They got Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo is made for March. They've got some good players. I like seeing Michigan State in the bracket. So I mean, versus some of these other teams that may, they could get blown out. I think Michigan State's a fun team. You know what you're going to get from Michigan State. So
And that's what makes me.
it's
so
a good
nervous.
matchup though, because I would have liked to take Mississippi State as being a guy who's watched a lot of Tennessee basketball. I've seen a lot of Mississippi State played. Obviously, they just beat Tennessee in the bracket or in the SEC tournament, and they got that freshman Josh Hubbard, and he's really really good, and they're just a really good team overall. So I actually like Mississippi State, but it's really hard to go against Tom Izzo and Marge. I'll pick Michigan State if it was me.
Yeah, and Tom Izzo, like Michigan State is either going to be that team that doesn't win a game at all, or they're going to go on a run. So Michigan State over Mississippi State, we'll take Michigan State.
That's a juicy matchup in the next round.
St. Mary's and Grand Canyon.
Antelopes. I say Grand Canyon. Now, I did read a stat that said, I saw it earlier on Twitter from a guy who said that whenever fast-paced teams go against slow-paced teams, 80% of the time, the slow-paced team wins. But I don't even know how you calculate that.
That's what makes,
what I mean?
That's one of the things that makes Virginia like so susceptible to beating anybody. But that's why they also lost to a 16 seed, because they play at such a slow pace and they play such good defense that if you can't control the tempo of the game, they'll just drag the clock out. They'll run their offense full 30 seconds, but then as soon as a team gets hot, a 6-point lead feels like a 12-point lead.
Yeah.
So like that's what makes those teams. I don't really like picking those kinds of teams, and that's why I think that Virginia is always so susceptible to getting upset. Last year they lost to Furman on that last second three.
Yeah, I just never want to root for a team like that. It's no fun to watch, So I'm going with the Antelopes. They're fast, they're fun, and they were borderline top 25 all year. They honestly should probably be better than a 12 seed. They won a good game against UT Arlington, which I don't know if you watched any of those games.
Yeah.
But UT Arlington won a buzzer beater at the end, nasty three-pointer, to win to get to the finals, and then Grand Canyon just kind of mopped the floor with them. So it was a good game, don't get me wrong, but Grand Canyon handled business like they should. I think they're an underrated team. I like Grand Canyon, and they're just a lot more fun to watch. So if St. Mary's beats them, they can, but I'm going with the fun, fast-paced team.
For sure. Alabama and Charleston. I'm thinking Alabama on this one.
So what happens, we talked about when a slow-paced team meets a fast-paced team, but what about when a fast-paced team meets a fast-paced team and a three-point shooting team meets a three-point shooting team? Because that's all these two teams do is just run up and down the court and put up threes. There could probably be 100 threes taken in this game.
Yeah, so then at that point, it just depends on who has the most skilled players and can create the most space.
Give it to Alabama then, because they definitely have the more talented players.
Yeah, and that's what makes like a team like Alabama a little bit scary, is that if they get hot at the right time, just like we talked about Auburn making the Final Four a couple years ago, they got hot at the right time and they were just ridiculous. You just couldn't beat them.
Fair enough.
Clemson and New Mexico. I feel like my ACC bias is going to show out on a little bit on this one, but Clemson's got PJ Hall. He was almost a 20-point a game scorer. Got a couple of votes for ACC Player of the Year. Clemson was a fringe top 25 team all season long, and I think that they advance on this one.
No. I've already clicked New Mexico. New Mexico.
You're forcing my hand here.
I'm forcing your hand on this one, dude. Clemson is so bad. They just got embarrassed in the ACC tournament.
They got Joseph Girard, dude.
No, man, no.
Okay, wait. They lost to Wake by 5 points.
They're not good, man. They're not a good team. I don't like Clemson. I can't believe they're a 6 seed. There's no way they should be a 6 seed. I like New Mexico. Lobos. Look at that, 21-11, and you're a 6 seed, dude.
They're in the ACC.
The ACC's bad.
People are not giving the ACC enough credit.
Bad, Lucas. There's no credit. There should have only been 2, maybe 3 teams from the ACC in the tournament.
See, North Carolina and Duke have a couple of off years, and then everybody just assumes. So what?
Those are the only 2 teams that should be in the tournament. NC State stole a bid. If they don't win it all, they're not in the tournament. Virginia definitely should not be in the tournament. They're in the play-in game.
Virginia shouldn't have been. Pitt should have been in.
Virginia should not have been in. Pitt should not be in. None of those. Did you know that Pitt's strength of schedule was like 300th in the country?
Oh yeah, but like other teams where that made it.
The ACC is down.
Michigan State's got 14 losses.
Yeah, they have quad 1 wins.
Yeah, it's like 14, but they lost 14 games though.
Yeah, but
so okay. So the ACC is really bad, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what seed was it that Miami was last year? And they made it to the Final Four.
5 or 6 seed, I think.
Okay, so they were a 5 or 6 seed. They were
last year. The ACC was good.
They were the ACC was worse last year than what it was this year.
Lucas, you're wrong. I'm sorry,
North Carolina didn't even make the tournament last year.
The ACC top to bottom was better last year than it is this year. This year it is bad. Now, North Carolina is very, very good. Duke, they're good. But
top 20.
After that, Virginia should not be in the tournament. Clemson should not have been in the tournament. Pitt didn't make the tournament. And NC State only got in because they stole a bid.
Every time somebody says that the ACC is having a down year, Miami was like the 4th best team and they made the Final Four.
Yes,
North Carolina was an 8 seed.
That was a different year.
They were an 8 seed 2 years ago and they made the Final Four. The ACC, in a down year for the ACC 2 seasons ago, they had half the teams in the Final Four. So it happens year after year. People overrate the Big 12 and they overrate the Big 10 and they underrate the ACC.
Fan, so you can't look away and just take a deep breath.
The stats are showing it, though. Every year people talk about the ACC being down. All of a sudden, then they start having teams that start winning in March Madness. And then it comes full circle again, and all of a sudden the Big 12 and the Big 10 get overrated like they do every single year. TCU's lost 12 games. I mean, every year it happens. And Clemson's got a great big man. But they're gonna lose to New Mexico State. So I'll let the record be known. Jonas is the guest. I'm going to let him have this pick, but I will be texting him as soon as Clemson wins this game on Friday at 3:10.
Fair enough.
Actually, it'd be more like 5:10 because that game will be well over like by the time the score is done.
Fair enough.
All right, Baylor and Colgate. I know what I really want to do on this one.
You want to pick Colgate?
At some point,
Colgate make the tournament every year, and every year we pick them, and every year they lose.
At some point,
win.
At some point, there's gonna be a team in this bracket that is gonna lose that really should win the game. Something's gonna happen that doesn't make sense.
That's Clemson.
So what out of all the top 3 seeds, like a 1, 2, 3 seed, which one's gonna get upset in the first round? Because it's got to happen, right? Like, there's got to be a top, 12 team that's going to lose first weekend.
Sure. Of course.
So are we expecting like Baylor, Arizona, Tennessee, Creighton? Like somebody's got to lose.
I mean, if I'm picking one, I guess it's Baylor. I feel like I see Colgate every year, and I pick Colgate every year, and every year they
Like
lose.
I don't feel good about it, but like I'm
But
kind of
listen,
reaching for something that doesn't make
I don't have
sense.
any ties to Baylor. I don't have any
I
rooting
don't like
interest in
Baylor.
Baylor. You don't like Baylor, so let's pick Colgate.
Hey,
And
which
now,
that would be a pretty good matchup. 11 and a 14 seed in the second round. All right, Dayton and Nevada. This is another one of those 7-10 matchups that actually kind of favored the 10 seed a little bit. So what are you thinking on this one?
I have no pull either way, honestly, man.
I'm thinking Dayton.
Let's do it.
I'm thinking the 7 seed. And then Arizona and Long Beach State. Is Caleb Love and the boys, are they going to keep it rolling?
100%, because we're cooking for all we're hoping for this entire tournament is that Rick Barnes goes against Texas and that Caleb Love goes against R.J. Davis in North Carolina. That's
Yeah,
our two hopes for the whole tournament.
and unfortunately, I feel like one of those teams isn't going to make it to the Elite Eight.
We'll see.
I don't think so. All right, other side. So let's work our way up. Tennessee and St. Peter's. Is St. Peter's going to do it again?
No. Tennessee wins.
Yeah, no, I don't
They
think so.
handle
Either.
business.
All right, Texas and either Virginia or is it Colorado State, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
here's
so
here's
probably
my
Colorado
pick. I
State would
hate
be my
Virginia
guess to
because
beat
the ACC
Virginia.
is terrible and Virginia is no fun to watch and they shouldn't be.
I hate watching Virginia too.
They shouldn't be in the tournament. I think if Colorado State wins that game, which they should, I think they beat Texas. But if Virginia wins, Texas wins, and I say we pick Texas. I want Tennessee versus Texas. I think that'll be fun to watch. Rick Barnes versus his old assistant over there at Texas. So.
Let's do it. Creighton, they've had a pretty good run. Creighton and Akron.
Creighton, I think
Yeah,
they're a
I'm
dark
thinking
horse to
Creighton
make
too.
a big run, but.
South Carolina and Oregon. Oregon they just won the Pac-12.
So this one's tough because this is one where I think a lot of people are going to pick Oregon because they just won the Pac-12. They are a very good team. And I don't think a lot of people have faith in South Carolina. And like you said, people are always looking for an upset. They want to find an upset to pick and run with. This is going to be one I think a lot of people are going to pick, and I think they're wrong. I think South Carolina is a very good team. That coach, Lamont Paris, great head coach. What's their young? Is it Colin Murray Boyles? Great player. They've got a lot of them. Michi Johnson and the boys. But it's Michi Johnson. Auburn has a Johnson. Yeah, Michi Johnson. Okay, yeah. Auburn has a Johnson as well that's really good. So Michi Johnson, Colin Murray Boyles, South Carolina, very good team. Have beat a lot of good teams. Throttled Tennessee at Tennessee. I like South Carolina to win this game. But I do like Oregon, but I think this is one where a lot of people are going to pick Oregon, and I think they're wrong.
Big bounce back year for them too. And a team with only 7 losses, like North Carolina's got 7 losses. Granted, you could have an argument between like the level of competition, strength of schedule, that type of stuff. But if South Carolina was like preseason ranked like 20, they would be like flirting with like a 2 or 3 seed, especially given the teams that they beat. So yeah, I'm with you actually on this one. South Carolina is going to be that popular upset picked by a lot of people, but they're the more talented team. They're ranked higher for a reason. I think that there's even a possibility that they could be a little bit underseeded. So South Carolina, I'm actually going to go the same thing on this. Like, definitely not a big fan of Kansas. They constantly beat North Carolina, but I think that they're going to get some of their players back. They had a really down end of the season, but they're going to get like one of their 2 players back that are injured, if not both of them. And a lot of people are going to pick this 13 seed beating a 4 seed because Kansas has been injured, but I think that they're going to make just a little bit of a bounce back. So I would actually lean towards Kansas for that same logic that we just put to Oregon and South Carolina.
That's fine. I am going to be one of those people that pick Samford to win. And I probably will be one of those people that pick McNeese State to win because here's the thing. Gonzaga and Kansas have the household names. They are both down. These are both 2 of the worst teams for that program in the last decade. Now, that's not saying much because they both have had great teams over the last 10 years, which I talk about teams I love. And I love the Jalen Suggs Gonzaga. I wanted them to win so bad. But that's another conversation. But both Kansas and Gonzaga have not had a very good year up to their standards.
Yep.
I like both these teams to lose. Probably not going to lose in the first round, but I don't think either of them go very far. So these are 2 where I would pick them to lose in the first round because I don't think they're getting much further than that anyway. So if they do prove me wrong, I don't think they're going to prove me wrong by much. But
Utah State and TCU. I would almost
so you're
feel
going to take McNeese? You going to ride with me on McNeese?
yeah. We'll go with McNeese. Another upset. So, and for anybody that's thinking, oh yeah, like that's not going to happen. Well, that's what everybody says until a team loses. So like, I mean, we're making educated guesses here.
Yep.
Utah State and TCU.
Coin
I
flip.
just give TCU a little bit of a hard time a minute ago, but like they are a little bit battle tested because there are some solid teams in their conference, and I would tend to think that they'd be more weathered to play a team like Utah State. But quite frankly, I don't really know a whole lot about Utah State if I'm being honest. So like they've got a guy that's averaging 18 points a game, 9 rebounds, like solid on the glass. Um, I mean, I don't really see any like notable wins here. Like they played San Diego State a couple times. Like I don't know. Like I would lean towards TCU a little bit on this one.
Fair enough. Let's do it.
All right, and then we got Purdue, and they're definitely getting upset first round. I had to. I just had to take the little dig there.
I loved it last year. I thought it was awesome. I was rooting for them to lose.
No, I don't think it's
The
gonna
problem with
happen.
Purdue is they're just not. They're hard to root for. They really are. I mean, and I'm happy they're doing well, but they're hard to root for with Zach.
Is Zach
Zach
Edey,
Edey's great.
is
Zach
he
Edey-
deserving of Player of the Year this year? This
I mean,
year,
I would love to see Dalton. I think Dalton Connect should win it, but I mean, the problem is like you get to be that level of great that Zach Edey is, and it just becomes normal when it's really not normal what he's done. So, no, I want the award to go to Dalton Connect or R.J. Davis or one of these guys. But yeah, I mean, if we're being honest, Zach Edey probably should get the award. I mean,
and I hate watching Purdue too because every time I see him, like not trying to hate on the kid or anything, but like man, he just strikes me as just big. Like he's got moves, and it's not like he's not talented because you don't get to be Player of the Year and not have talent. But like when I watch him playing against teams that don't have a great big, it's just like he's just outsizing the other guys.
yeah, but how many big guys come through college basketball every year and don't do what he does? You know what I mean?
And that's
What I'm saying.
that's,
It's hard.
that's
It is
fair.
hard to watch, and it's not the most fun. But well, listen, we're gonna get to tougher matchups for Purdue. Purdue's not losing 2 years in a row in the round of 64 or in the first round. That'd be crazy. So we'll talk about Purdue a little bit later. But let's
So we're on to Marquette and Western Kentucky. Are we gonna have?
Marquette.
Yeah, we're not gonna have a 15 seed
So
advance
Marquette
this
was
year.
one of those years. Last year was the team that I jumped on their bandwagon. I love Tyler Kolek. I love Cam Jones. I love Osoi Gadaro. Like they're just so much fun to watch. I'm all in. I'm back in. I wasn't in on them for a little while. I fell off, but now I'm all the way back in. They just made a great tournament run without Kolek. Kolek's gonna come back. I'm all in on Marquette. I'm picking them to go far.
All right, we got the 7-10 matchup. Boise State and Colorado are going to play. The winner of that goes against Florida. And fortunately for them, and unfortunately for Florida, Florida just had a pretty big injury. So that weakens them a little bit coming in here, and it makes this matchup even that more interesting. I'd be inclined to pick the winner of Boise State and Colorado to advance over Florida, but this also feels like a trap game too. Like, Florida's got other good players. So, what are you thinking here?
I had already tapped Florida because I thought that's the direction you were going, but then you said the injury, so then I flipped back to Boise, Colorado. I think Florida. I mean, they've been a great team. The SEC is so deep. They're another one like South Carolina where I think people will, maybe just pick the upset just to pick the upset. Florida's good. I like Florida.
Kentucky and Oakland.
Kentucky, dude.
Yeah,
I
I'm
love
thinking Kentucky too.
I love some Reed Shepherd, and I love some what's my 6 minute? Why did I just blank on my guy's name? He's the most fun player in the country to watch.
Rob Dillingham.
Yes,
Dude, he's a beast.
most fun player in the country to watch.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Him and Dalton Connect are tied, but yes, I mean they're.
He's one of those.
Listen, Kentucky doesn't play a lick of defense; they could be out in an instant, but they are so much fun.
Rob Dillingham is also one of those cool players. Like he's just cool. It's just like he's just fun to watch. He looks like he already belongs in the
Hard to root
NBA.
for
Like
Tennessee and Kentucky.
he-
But
he
I'm
does
gonna
not
try
look-
to walk that line this tournament because I love me some Kentucky.
a lot of college players just like look like they're so fundamental. Like Rob Dillingham like plays like a superstar in the NBA. Just like the way the shots that he takes, and he makes so many of them too.
He's so good. I love him.
Texas Tech and NC State.
NC State, dude.
NC State being led by Escalade.
He's a monster, dude. He is a monster. They're hot. You got to pick them, man. They look so good. Excuse me, in that tournament, that ACC tournament. So, I'm going NC State.
Duke and Vermont.
Unfortunately,
I'm thinking Duke.
Duke.
Wisconsin and James Madison.
I think James Madison could win this game. Wisconsin, they're another team that was very good to start the season and then was very bad for all of February. But then they got back right and made a run in the Big Ten tournament, upset and beat Purdue. Yeah. Wisconsin probably should win this game, but I like James Madison.
I'm thinking James Madison. I was actually thinking James Madison too before this one. Nebraska and Texas A&M.
This one was tough for me.
I'm telling you what.
The 8-9 matchups all are very tough.
Tominga,
he's fun, man.
Kamikaze, dude, he's awesome.
He's fun. I like him, man. But A&M is so good, dude. And Buzz Williams, I mean, this is what they do. He's similar to Izzo. They get to these times and they can just make runs.
You know Caitlin's a Nebraska fan, right?
Oh, is she?
She is.
I didn't know that.
She's
big Nebraska.
She's a Nebraska fan, man. I don't think I could make it alive out of this room if I don't take Tominga and the boys.
But Wade Taylor, it's a Reese Radford. Them boys at A&M are good, man. They could make a run.
They are. That's a tough pull for Nebraska to face A&M right the first round, and then Houston and Longwood. Easy. I don't think there's no argument there. Houston.
Fair enough.
All right, let's go ahead and start back over. So we've got UConn and Northwestern facing off the round of 32. I'm just thinking UConn. I mean, it makes the most sense. San Diego State and Auburn. I know who I like in this one.
Auburn?
Yeah, I'm taking Auburn. I think that they're hot right now, and I think they're going to keep that going. Duquesne and Illinois.
I hate to go 3 chalk picks in a row, but I think Illinois.
Logically speaking, like, the first round or two are really where most of the upsets happen. The further that the tournament goes on, that's where, like, the lower seeded teams get weeded out. And then you have, like, the 4s beating the 1s, the 3s beating the 2s. But to me, those aren't really, like, huge upsets. So
there's some other regions I see some upsets too, but not in this one. I like Iowa State.
Drake and Iowa State. All right, so we'll go on Iowa State, and that'll be a pretty cool matchup. Iowa State and Illinois conference champions going up against each other. We won't get ahead of ourselves, but that's a good one to look to. North Carolina and Michigan State.
This is probably not one you want to see. Or you do.
The team that I don't want to see is Mississippi State. So if we're going up against Michigan State, North Carolina has historically had their number. Asked a lot of Michigan State fans, even the years that they've been better than North Carolina, we've still beaten them.
It just looks like a Final Four matchup, dude. It's supposed to be a Final Four matchup, North Carolina versus Michigan State, or a national championship one. So it'll be fun to see in the round of 32 if we get it. But yeah, North Carolina.
Grand Canyon and Alabama, one of these upset teams. Faced off against Alabama, you think the hot shooting keeps them going?
Alabama should win this game. I would pick GCU, but we should probably pick Alabama. But in my personal one, I'll pick Grand Canyon.
Well, and we have a unique matchup coming up here: New Mexico against Colgate. I had to twist your arm a little bit to get Colgate here, but I think logically New Mexico gets this one.
Lobos.
And then Dayton and Arizona. I think that Arizona, if they could, and same thing for North Carolina, if they can make it out of the first weekend, I think that they're destined to face off in the Elite Eight. But that first weekend, I think, is going to be, especially that second round matchup, is going to be a challenge for both UNC and Arizona. I like Arizona in this, but I think it'll be closer than a lot of people think. Tennessee and Texas, like you said, Rick Barnes against his old team. I'm big on Tennessee this year. I think we're both in agreement to that.
Colin Connect is different. This is a different Tennessee team.
They got Zakai Ziegler, Josiah Jordan-James. They got a great mix of defense. Guy contending for Player of the Year. They've got all the makings of a team that should win a championship.
Yep.
Creighton and South Carolina. I think that this one would be like a barn burner. I would lean a little bit towards Creighton, but I could definitely see South Carolina going here. So I'll defer to you on this one.
Creighton's so good, man. They did just have a bad. I guess I shouldn't say bad, but definitely they lost to Providence in that. It's Providence, right?
Yeah.
Providence. I watched so much basketball, man. It's crazy.
It's the games start to run together.
But yeah, Creighton lost to Providence in the Big East tournament. That was a little bit of a letdown for me because I did have them as kind of a dark horse. They should take care of business this game, but man, it would not shock me at all. South Carolina wins
for sure. So we'll let Creighton advance on this one. That'll be a fun game to watch. Kansas and McNeese. Now, could you imagine this matchup here? Kansas and McNeese. Kansas, somebody that a lot of people are expecting to lose first round. McNeese, a 12 seed. This might be our Cinderella right here.
McNeese.
Purdue and TCU.
Purdue takes care of business.
How fun would that be to have TCU and McNeese
that would be a blast.
In the Sweet 16? All right. Florida and Marquette. I'm leaning towards Marquette on this one. I'm not a big believer in Marquette though. Like they were able to beat some good teams, but UConn just had their number all year long.
Well, Marquette gets an extra. You got to think about it. They get 6 men on the field or on the court on defense because Shaka Smart. If you ever watch him in those
Yeah,
games,
well, he's kind of like NC State's coach. So he gets on the court a
yeah,
little too
he's
much.
way out there. So you got an extra guy on defense that should help you. I think they get to the Sweet 16.
NC State and Kentucky.
Kentucky, man.
Yeah, I like Kentucky too. I think that Kentucky's going to have a little bit of a run in them here. Like I said, big fan of Rob Dillingham. I wish he came to UNC. Reed Shepherd. Yeah, I like their team. James Madison and Duke. I don't like it.
Which
but
Duke are you taking?
I'm taking Duke, man. Like, surely they're not going to lose to James Madison.
It'd be
As
fun.
much as I would laugh my butt off if they lost to James Madison, I would love it. But I just logically I can't do it. Like I've seen Duke too many times just like punch like above their weight, and this is the typical year where you would underestimate Duke and then they would go on a run.
But we can. We can pick James Madison. It is in our
like
hands.
you really, it is. I mean, it really is.
It really is in our hands.
But are 2 12 seeds going to advance to the Sweet 16? Like,
Probably. Statistically speaking, probably.
all right, Duke haters unite. Let's go, James.
Let's
Madison.
go.
Houston and Nebraska.
Come on, dude. Think about the visual in your head of Kyle Filipowski flopping as they storm courted and then pretending to be injured and then
he
trying
tries
to
to
trip.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. You really want to pick them?
No, I don't. I don't. I don't want to pick with my heart too much because I'm about to plead Nebraska's case to you in this matchup against Houston because surely somebody is going to lose that really shouldn't lose a game.
Let's go. I'm good with it.
Nebraska and the Kamikaze Tominga in the Sweet 16. Let's do it.
Is that his nickname? Do people call him that?
I'm speaking it into existence. I think we're far enough past like World War II that okay, I'm probably gonna get canceled on this one. It's okay.
No, I'm just. I didn't, you said it now, and I'm like, I've never heard anyone.
It makes too much. He flies around the court like a maniac. Like he's like, what do they call him? They call him like Asian Steph Curry. I don't know. I like Kamikaze better though. Like
maybe you started something.
He's flying around, dude. He's got the headband. It gives him extra powers. Like UConn and Auburn. Oh man. UConn and Auburn.
I think Auburn can win this game. I've already said I like Bruce Pearl, but UConn.
This has been a popular pick of mine. I've been taking Auburn lately on this one,
We
but
can
I
Once
think
again, we have all the power in the
I
world
think
here.
UConn really does make sense though. As much as I think maybe I might be blinded a little bit by my bias against UConn. Their fans rubbed me the wrong way after winning last year, so
Fair enough.
yeah. So we'll go UConn. Logically, it makes the most sense. Illinois and Iowa State. You've been riding Iowa State.
I like the Cyclones, man. I really do. Now Illinois, they have great guards, great play, good coach. But I like Iowa State, man. They play great defense. Their offense is coming around. Cyclones. Shout out to our boy Ty from the Fantasy Football League. He's a huge Iowa State fan, alumni, and so I like Iowa State, man. I think they win.
Good deal. All right, North Carolina and Alabama. I've got to take my hands off of this one because I know that it's not going to be quite the game that I would think it's going to be because I'm biased. So I'm going to defer totally to you on this one. I will leave this pick completely in your hands.
Tar Heels roll, dude. Come on, we're going Tar Heels, Arizona for the Elite Eight.
If I'm making the argument,
Alabama,
I would
could
say
be out
that
in the
North
first
Carolina
round, dude. Like
North
Alabama,
yeah.
If they go cold, they're done.
North Carolina can. I think that they could shoot with Alabama. What bothers me about North Carolina could
though because they play defense,
and that's what I was about to say is that they can play defense. The thing about North Carolina and Alabama is they both could go cold, but I think that the North Carolina's got enough on the inside.
That's what I'm saying. North Carolina's not just gonna go
and they're
cold.
gonna play defense.
They have so many players and they have so many different ways to score. Like they're not just a catch and shoot team. They're not just an ISO team. Like they can do. You've got guys like Harrison Ingram that is a perfect 3-and-D NBA type player. You've got Cormac Ryan that can have nights like he did against Duke the other day where he just goes absolutely scorched earth and goes off. You have RJ Davis who can shoot, who can get to the basket, who can get to the foul line. Baycott that can go down low. Like you've got it all over the place. You got Cadeau who can literally turn defense into offense like that. North Carolina has so many options, such a well-built team. North Carolina wins.
And if I'm arguing their case too, they've got Jalen Withers on off the bench, and he could be a little bit erratic at times. But when he played for Louisville, he was a center, starting center for Louisville. He's not a center. He's like a stretch four, and so if he's able to play like pretty much every position on the floor, like if he can defend every position on the floor, he gets those scrappy rebounds. Like Seth Trimble, he's our best defender. He's our sixth man. Comes off the bench. You got Jalen Washington. He's like the complete opposite of Baycott, where he's got the length to still disrupt around the basket, but he's like a stretch five. Like he can shoot threes. Yeah, North Carolina. I like them against Alabama, but being a fan, I could be a little biased here. And then I think it's both obvious. New Mexico, Arizona. This is where the run ends for New Mexico, and we create really the matchup of the tournament. I think here in North Carolina, Player of the Year contenders. R.J. Davis and Caleb Love won Player of the Year in their conference. Caleb Love's known for hitting the big shots. This is going to be a fun one, I think.
I love it.
Same thing for Creighton and Tennessee. This is going to be another one. A lot of points, a lot of fun. I'm leaning Tennessee still.
Let's do it.
And then this takes us to our next matchup here, Purdue and McNeese.
We have a problem. We're 2 for 2, and we're about to be 3 for 3 on 1 and 2 in the final.
And that's just not going to happen.
It's not.
Tennessee can be known to choke a little bit, though, honestly. But like, if we're making the picks this way, there is going to be some chalk, and those lower seeded teams are going to be weeded out. I mean, I think we're having the right mix of our heart and our mind here. It's like nobody says that it can't happen this way.
But it's not going to.
No, and I don't think the top half of Purdue's side of the bracket is really going to be enough to put together anything to stop them from making it this far. So, like, I just can't find an excuse for another team to beat them. Like, the closest thing would be maybe TCU over them and for them to face Tennessee. But, like, I don't know. Like, I'm just not seeing that.
All right. Purdue it is.
Yeah. Hate to go chalk this far, but I think that we've got a good argument pretty much for every team here, and you can do that for the higher seed. I just think I don't think that Alabama's going to get hot enough to beat North Carolina. I don't think that even if Baylor meets Arizona, I don't think that Baylor is going to get there. I don't know. I think it makes sense to me because we do have on the top side of this bracket some lower seeded teams that have made it a little bit far, and yeah, again, like we've got some 1 and some 2s here, like. Probably not going to shake out that way. But Nebraska and James Madison. James Madison on the run. Nebraska, the lower seeded team too. Like, one of these teams is definitely going to be the Cinderella. Might be James Madison.
That's who you want?
It's not who I want, but I think I might have played my Nebraska card too many times.
James Madison to the Elite Eight.
All right. And then we got Kentucky and Marquette. I like Kentucky in this one.
Let's do it. Marquette is a fun team. I love them, but these are both two teams that there's a lot of variance in the cards for Marquette and Kentucky. So Kentucky,
all right,
like
so,
anyone else could be out in the first round, but
so let's take a step back here. So now that we see things the way that they've kind of made their way out here. Mm-hmm. Purdue and Tennessee, a 1 and a 2 seed. North Carolina and Arizona, a 1 and a 2 seed. We've got UConn and Iowa State, a 1 and a 2 seed. Are there any changes that we want to make to that?
Yes.
I think so too. Because I mean, really logically thinking about it, it's probably not going to work out that way.
It's not going to happen. I think an easy one to pick is Creighton to beat Tennessee. I think that's very much a possibility. Creighton's a very good team, and Tennessee's known to choke in March Madness. And so I am rooting for Tennessee. Like I said, I have money invested in Tennessee, so I'm very much go Vols, but I think Creighton is an easy one. We're not picking Alabama to beat North Carolina, that's for sure. And I love Arizona. I think Arizona. Now, Tommy Lloyd has been known to fold too, but I don't think the problem is we put New Mexico and Colgate in there, and I don't genuinely think either of those two teams can beat them.
No.
So I do think Arizona stays. The only other one I think maybe Illinois does beat Iowa State. I like the Cyclones. If it was my personal bracket,
Yeah. If
I'm go ahead.
if I was gonna make if I was gonna make a change, and you start to teeter back towards picking too many upsets, but like if I was really going to like go for a change, like I would almost take TCU over Purdue, given their history. TCU and McNeese, TCU advances, put a TCU matchup against Tennessee. Like I, I, I just have such a
I just
hard
think it's
time
a
with.
stretch. I
I
think
have
you're
such a
more
hard time with this many
you're
one seeds
you're
making it
more
this
than
far.
likely only because TCU could be out in the first round and then you look terrible, right? So I think it's more than likely like either you put Creighton in there or you go to the top and you say Bruce Pearl and Auburn rolls and beats UConn. I think that's very much a possibility.
In,
Those are probably
in all of my brackets, that's what I've been picking as Auburn
well, then
to
let's
beat
let's
UConn.
do that. Let's switch it. I mean, UConn is incredible. They're probably not going to lose. They're probably going to go back to back. But if we want some variance, I think that's a place you can get it, and I think Creighton, Tennessee is a place you can get it.
And I think Auburn and UConn is it can be enough of a toss up. I mean, like you said, team gets hot. UConn could have a cold night. I mean, how many times have we seen like the best team in the field like happened to Kansas a while back? Best team in the field lost to an 8 seed. It just happens too often for me to like. And going back to back is so hard. They just won their conference tournament. Yeah, I think that that's a good
So we take
logical change to
Auburn,
make.
and then do we touch Tennessee, Creighton, or leave it?
I think we take Creighton
Okay.
because Tennessee's also got that track record of. I think they've got that track record of getting upset in the tournament, like and not making it to levels that they should have made it to.
I like it. So we got one chalk, 1 and 2. We've got a 1 and 3. We've got a 4 and 2, and then we have a crazy one of 3 and 12.
Okay, so we'll go back to the top side of this bracket where we've been kind of, we'll just reset here. Auburn and Iowa State. I think if Auburn gets past UConn, I think that they take Iowa State too.
You're still sleeping on the Cyclones, but
Maybe I am. Maybe I'm just not seeing it.
all right, let's go Auburn.
While we're here, we'll go ahead and take a look at James Madison in Kentucky. As tempting as it is to take James Madison that far, I like Kentucky too much. And there's going to be some Kentucky fans that'll probably say, like, just be down on the team a little bit. And I know that they've had some rough stretches, but yeah, they didn't win the conference tournament, but they had a good win against Tennessee. They've got the shooters. I still like their team overall. Purdue and Creighton.
Creighton. They've got
Creighton,
a big
let's
man
do it.
that can get down there and play with them, dude.
Let's do
Bailey
it.
Shireman, is that his name?
Yeah, I like Baylor Shireman a lot. Yeah, I think he's awesome. And yeah, and Purdue. I mean, to this point, this is a really respectable run for them, especially considered in years past. Yeah, I think that they can make the Final Four, but I like Creighton a little bit better in this one.
Game of the tournament.
North Carolina and Arizona.
If I could have asked you going last year, pick one of R.J. Davis or Caleb Love. You're gonna say R.J. Davis because of what he's done, but would you have
Caleb Love was my favorite player on the team.
was he?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I
Caleb
want to know.
Caleb Love was my favorite player.
I think he gets bad rap, dude. I think people make him the bad guy in this situation. I don't think it was all his fault.
I think that from kind of what I heard is that they pretty much came to him at the end of the season. Just the way that things shook out, I think that they needed to make some changes. They had to pick, they had to pretty much pick one player or the other because they knew it wasn't going to work out having two ball dominant players like Davis and Love. And so Love ended up being the guy where they were like, we're gonna move on. You probably should just transfer, have your own team. But one thing that Caleb Love got a bad rap with North Carolina fans, and the thing that I didn't like about it is because he hit all those big shots in the tournament the year before. North Carolina's ball movement was awful last season. I mean, they didn't move the ball. Baycott got double teamed in the post, and then it would take him forever to pass out of it. And pretty much they made Caleb Love the bail us out guy. So he had to go every single possession. The ball would not move around. It would get stuck. They'd get doubled. They'd chuck the ball out to Caleb Love hanging out around half court. And then they basically tell him, like, hey, see if you can make something happen. And a player is going to always shoot poor percentages if he always becomes the bailout guy and the scapegoat guy for the offense not moving the ball. And I think that he got a bad rap because he did take some selfish shots, but that was also the role that he was given on that team, and it was also what was pretty much asked of him because of what he did in the past. And they overdid it. And he had a bad season. The guy that they had transfer coming in, he was not what they needed. I think he had talent, but it just didn't mesh. And Caleb Love got a bad rap, and you can see what happens when you put a good player in the right circumstance, not make him the bailout guy, but still let him have those appropriate opportunities to hit the big shots. And you see all the big shots that Caleb Love hit still this year too. So
Yeah, I think he became the bad guy in the situation. I just love to see that it worked out for both
yeah,
parties. You know what I mean? North Carolina, RJ Davis has excelled by himself. They've been a much better team than they were last year, and he's made Arizona a national championship
yeah.
contender, which they were last year, but got upset early. And I think he brings some real credence to a run for Arizona. So I'm happy it worked out for both parties. You love to see that, and I think this is going to be a phenomenal matchup. Like I said, rooting for it 100%. Need to see it. I do think North Carolina wins. I think they're the better team, and I think that they've got the experience where Arizona doesn't. You know, Tommy Lloyd has never made a deep run. That Arizona team, like I said, got bounced early last year. Was it Yale or was it Princeton? Who was it? It was one of the,
I can't
it was
remember.
it was an Ivy League school though. It was one of those two. Beat them early, and it's
Princeton.
it was Princeton,
Yeah,
and
it was
it's
Princeton.
honestly no one remembers. You know why? Because Purdue literally lost like seconds later as a 1 seed to the
To
16
Farley
seed, and so
Dickinson.
everybody forgot about the 15 seed beating
Yeah.
the 2 seed. But yeah, I think North Carolina. I think they're the more experienced team, older players, better coaching. North Carolina wins.
And if I want to put my fandom aside a little bit, I think that Arizona scares me because I get worried about what their guards can do, and I've seen too many times out of Cormac Ryan this year that he's just too hot and cold, and sometimes it doesn't matter what open shots he's getting. North Carolina shot 8 for 30 from 3. So that's the only thing that scares me about them.
All right, now I'm going to contradict myself because now I'm looking at this Final Four, and it looks a little bit too risky. We only have one number 1 seed, 2 3 seeds, and a 4 seed. That doesn't look right either. Now I feel like we need a little bit more chalk in our Final Four.
I think it's appropriate though because we've only got one number 1 seed making it, and historically you almost always have at least one seed make it. Like last year when you had multiple 5 seeds and an 8 seed, like
No,
that
but
usually
I'm
just
saying
doesn't
we need
happen.
more. I think we have 2 number 1 seeds this year, if not 3.
I like all the teams, but to me, like it makes sense though. I think we're good though. Like Houston, we just talked about Houston getting their doors blown off. Like all I know is that there is going to be one number 1 seed that does not make it out of the first weekend. And as much as North Carolina fans are going to clown me for it, I feel like it's either going to be Houston or North Carolina that's not going to make it out of the first weekend. And that may be a hot take, but it's just the facts. You look at the teams like Houston just had a bad game, and every year like something has happened. I just have a hard time seeing like all the 1 seeds making it that far because it just usually doesn't happen.
All right. Well, who you got from here on?
So man, I'm gonna pick North Carolina and Auburn with my heart because I don't like Bruce Pearl and they destroyed us a few years ago. So I'll pick the Kentucky Creighton game, and I'll let you pick the other game.
All right.
All right.
North
So
Carolina.
so if it's Kentucky and Creighton,
I'm picking North Carolina. I've already put
Okay.
it in there. It's popping up. North Carolina.
I'm gonna take Kentucky. And the Boo Birds come out because we've got 2 blue blood teams in the championship game. But if we're looking at Kentucky and North Carolina, Kentucky with Reed Sheppard, Rob Dillingham, they beat North Carolina earlier in the season on a neutral court. I'm going to argue for Kentucky, and I'll let you argue for North Carolina. So Kentucky, they beat North Carolina earlier in the year, and quite honestly, it was actually very similar to the UConn game in that North Carolina gave it a good effort, but they made too many mistakes, and I think too many mistakes really set them behind. They couldn't really guard Reed Sheppard. He had a good game. Rob Dillingham came in and had a good game. It was one of North Carolina's, I wouldn't say poor efforts because they still gave it a good effort to a bad team, but they made way too many mistakes that game, and Kentucky took advantage of it.
That's your argument?
That would be my argument for Kentucky is that they got better through the year, I think. They've already beat North Carolina once. They've got I think they're a little bit better coming off the bench with Dillingham, and he could be that spark plug, just like how Grayson Allen was when Duke won in 2015. He came off the bench and won that game for them against Wisconsin. Something very similar could happen theoretically for Kentucky in this game.
Well, my argument for North Carolina is that they're much more experienced and they're much older. These guys have been in the national championship game before. And like you said, Cormac Ryan is 30 years old. Armando Bacot has been in North Carolina for 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are veterans, seasoned veterans that, are older than NBA All-Stars. So this game, you have Kentucky, who is fast-paced, and a bunch of freshmen, a couple sophomores, but they're a young team. They're quite the opposite, and I think North Carolina handles business top to bottom. They're just more balanced. Kentucky is more talented at the top. They've got some great young players, but North Carolina's balanced, man. Like I said, you have R.J. Davis running the point guard, which has completely unlocked his game and completely unlocked their offense in the system that Hubert Davis wants to run. Baycott down low, been great his whole career. This is it for him. Biggest stage, biggest game. Cormac Ryan, great 3-and-D player. Harrison Ingram, great 3-and-D player. Elliot Cadeau, that young, fast freshman, uber talented player, plays great defense. North Carolina, top to bottom, much more balance, much more experience. They win. And Kentucky doesn't play a lick of defense. That's the problem. They're so much fun. They might put up 100 points, but they're not going to play a lick of defense. And if you don't play defense on R.J. Davis and the boys, they will pound you. And so North Carolina wins it all.
And there's one thing also to be said about teams that have historically ranked, I believe it's in the top 25 in both offensive, I can't remember if it's offensive or defensive efficiency, but pretty much the teams that are ranked in the top 25 in both offensive and defensive rankings, they're pretty much your like bona fide contenders. Like if you're like logically going to look at a pool of teams and say these are the teams that can realistically make it, it's going to be that pool of teams that are in the top 25 for offense and defense. And North Carolina's right there. Ironically, their defense ranking is better than their offensive ranking. They're 25 at offense, a little bit higher with defense. And I think that you make a really good point because I'm trying not to show my bias too much in this, but North Carolina does have that experience. Even on most nights where they go cold, um, they've got the defense to make up for it, and they hit the paint hard enough to where they can get those shots on the inside. I think that North Carolina would pose a little bit of a problem for Kentucky on the inside. It just really depends on whether or not North Carolina goes cold and Kentucky goes hot. And yeah, you can say that for every game, but it makes a little bit more sense for teams that when North Carolina is lost, pretty much the last 4 or 5 games that they've lost for this season, it's because one team shot a significantly higher percentage of what they historically do, and then North Carolina just didn't quite hit as many threes. NC State, that was just they just plain went cold. They went cold. They couldn't guard hot sauce and Escalade. Um, if they cut down on those same mistakes that they made against Kentucky, I think that this one heavily favors North Carolina. But there again, somebody watching this is going to say, yeah, of course the guy wearing the North Carolina jersey is going to like his team. But they're a 1 seed for a reason, and they're the sneaky team because I think that they play defense just as good, if not better, than anybody. And on their best night, they'll beat anybody. So in this championship game,
Total points, we doing it?
are we going North Carolina over Kentucky?
Yes, I've already collected.
North Carolina over Kentucky, and
What's the
I
total
would
points?
say total points 156.
Like
You go 80 for North Carolina, 76 for Kentucky.
they definitely both can score that many points. I think it's in your best interest that they don't because you don't want to get in a shootout with Kentucky. You want to play some defense, but maybe it's more like 90 to 66.
I mean, I would love that. That would be fantastic. I've had too many teams lose championship games here lately, so it'd be nice to get one for once.
I like it.
All right. Well, that concludes a relatively long video for the channel.
Yeah, feel free to cut any of my long analysis.
No, we got to keep it in there because it's authentic, it's genuine, and I'm not trying to pull the editing magic over anybody. So this this is, as Hubert Davis would say, live action. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Jonas with Barbers United Barbershop. His channel is going to be linked below. Got some great interviews on there. Who are some of the more well-known guests, or who would you say would be some of the better interviews that you have had on the channel?
I had this one guy from Triple L Sports. You might have heard of him. He does a lot of content, a lot of North Carolina content, just a lot of sports content, great things. Lucas Larson.
Oh, see, now you're making me blush.
You should check his channel out if you get the chance.
You had a former pro wrestler on there, right?
I did. Mark
You,
Jindrak.
Yeah, you
Marco
had
Corleone.
you've had some TV personalities on there.
We've had some
relatives
some
of
collegiate
TV
players.
personalities. Yeah, collegiate
We've
players.
had a lot. Business owners, just local, a lot more local guys. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But it's a lot of fun. A lot of good stories. Feel free to check them out. We've taken a little bit of a break because all the holidays and stuff is the busiest time of the year, and I had backloaded a bunch of episodes, and then we just ran out and hadn't had time to shoot anymore. And so, but hopefully soon we'll get some more back up there, trying to build back up the pool of backlogged ones. But
we've got a good series going on with the fantasy league. I mean, and one of my favorite things about the fantasy league is you get to see everybody's personalities a little bit. Some people like to act out a little bit, and I think that makes it more fun for everybody.
It is.
So we've got the shop fantasy league on there, championship belt, nameplates of the winners go on the belt. Yeah, it's
this guy, 2023 champion.
And see now you're giving me a little bit more legitimacy for people to actually listen to me talk about sports.
2023 champion. You have a ring soon. Name on the belt.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. But check out his channel. Just a really cool vibe. Listening to the podcast, a lot of good people on there. Yeah, check everybody out because I think that everybody gives a very unique perspective. So got the Cutting Up podcast, Barbers United Barbershop, Jonas Thatcher. Appreciate you being on this video, and I'm looking forward to some Addis. I'm taking Thursday afternoon and Friday afternoon off of work, and right behind this camera I'm gonna have 3 TVs and a computer set up to have multiple screens going. It is a
You gonna put your bracket in the March Madness one, the Barbers United one? I mean,
absolutely.
Okay,
for sure.
I just opened it up today, so make sure you get it in there.
All right, guys, take it easy. And we'll see you on the next video. And as we always say, I always put my fist to the camera. But since I actually have a human being here next to me, we'll fist it out.